chai chat with Loveena out from a restaurant in the Parliament Square just because of Preet Gill, Right Honourable Preet Gill, the first women Sikh MP, and we know all about you as a mother, as a daughter, and it's beautiful to see the Preet in you. Now let's talk about the Right Honourable Preet. What are your priorities, Preet? What are you standing for now?
So during the election campaign, the things that were really important in the constituency, firstly, were around the education cut. So since we've come back into Parliament, this government hasn't actually made a commitment about what it's going to do, whether it's going to actually reverse the cuts. It has talked about consultation. In my constituency, £8.5 million out of every primary and secondary school is going to be cut. So that means the school I went to, Lordswood Girls, will lose 500,000 by 2020, and that's 14 teachers. If we're talking about the fifth richest country in the world, investing in our children and their education has got to be our first most paramount priority, especially when we talk about the skills deficit and the skills shortages that we have and how we're having to rely on EU migration to fill some of those skill shortages. So making sure that our young people are going to get the jobs for the future, have the right access to education and have the equality of opportunity actually is really, really important. It's something that I want to absolutely advocate on their behalf. And also, we've got to ask the question why so many teachers are leaving the profession.
Yes, and nurses, that comes to an
yes, yes. So I mean so education is a really important thing. Coming on to the NHS, so the University Hospital Trust is in my constituency, and you know, public sector pay cap has been frozen, as we know, at 1% for a very, very long time, and actually we need to absolutely value the work that our public sector actually does, so things like nurses and doctors. You know, the fact that we're leaving Brexit, you know, we need to really think about those doctors that come from the EU that support our NHS, and actually if they were to leave because of not knowing what their legal status is going to be, having the right to stay here, the impact on our NHS is going to be huge. So for me, making sure that actually the NHS also spends more of its budget on prevention so that we can ease some of the A&E pressures is going to be important. But actually, how do we make sure we use pharmacists in a way that actually eases off some of that pressure? How do we invest into our GPs, because we know some of them want to leave? So there's a lot of work to be done around the NHS, and we need to be listening to those people that work in our NHS and use our NHS to make sure that we absolutely address the deficits that exist there. I talked a bit about the skill shortages. One of the things I am concerned about is making sure not just people from my constituency, but in Birmingham, given the population, half of the population is under 30, have the access to jobs of the future, making sure that they leave school, so working closely with businesses, with colleges, with universities, and making sure that, you know, we are absolutely upskilling our young people so that there isn't that skills gap, there isn't that shortage of jobs for them in the local economy, and we need to make sure that what businesses need is absolutely a key priority.
Fantastic. You have a nice and right job to cut out for yourself now, especially when the Brexit is around, and we have Theresa May, who has been responsible for a lot of the cuts that you spoke about now. Very quickly touching upon the Indian side of the issue, some very important fact. Recently, the High Commissioner has said that UK has harboured a lot of refugees and sections of the society that are detrimental to not only India but India-UK relation, because they are harbouring here. And one such element is, of course, Khalistani elements. You come from that community; it's very strong in Birmingham. What are your views, and where do you stand with regards to that?
I think you have to evidence what you say. So if you say that there is the harbouring and there is that existence, then actually I've not seen the evidence of that in the years that I've lived here in this country, of where that sort of
there's a very strong Khalistani movement here, which we see demonstrations of in front of here, very much so in Birmingham as well, and not such a strong movement that exists in India anymore. And we see a lot of that element in people in public, and I have done stories on them. So that's what I'm
So
talking
you're
about.
talking about the 84 issue. As you know, Labour Party manifesto has included in it an independent inquiry into 1984 because I think people in this country have the right to know that what the actions of the then government, which was the Tory government, were in terms of supporting Indira Gandhi and the attack on Harmandir Sahib. People have the right to know. I think, look, human rights issues are things that will always resonate with people. The fact that thousands of people were murdered and they've never had justice is
Absolutely.
absolutely right, that people every year upon year come out in solidarity to connect and tell the people of the world about the massacres that took place. But most importantly, that these families have never had justice in the way that any democracy ought to deliver. So you can feel the anguish. I sometimes think we need to think about those mothers and those families that lost loved ones. We read all the time. We cannot become desensitized to any killing, no matter what guise it's in, but especially on humanitarian grounds.
Are you going to pursue the pressure for the inquiry? As you said, it's in the manifesto already.
Absolutely, I think the Labour Party has made a very strong commitment to that, and rightfully so, because people in this country have the right to know about what the Tory government's hand was in terms of the operation. We know that there's been the disclosure of papers. We haven't had an adequate inquiry. People have the right to know, and actually that's what people are saying. Like any inquiry, they want the right to know what was the truth, so people can make their own minds up about actually which political party they want to associate with, for example. I think that's very important.
Absolutely. Inquiry into 1984 completely, but there is also a faction that calls for Khalistan, a separate country called Khalistan. Where would you stand in that?
I'm not sure that it does in a way. I think what people are talking about when they talk about Khalistan are the very basic rights. So the basic right of water to Punjab, the issues of farmer suicides. Why are they happening so much? Why are farmers being discriminated against to the level that we've seen? We've seen so many organisations talk about the suicide rate actually in Punjab, the depletion of resources, electricity, basic commodities that we take for granted in the Western world.
But that is
Are
the
not
truth of many
prevalent.
other states in the country as well. It's not only true of Punjab, many other states.
But I think it's a bit more than that. If we go back to the history, if we look at the Longowal Accord, if we look at the Punjabi Suba issue, the fact that Punjabi is not the first language of the state of Punjab, but those languages are for other states, for example. We People obviously feel aggrieved because their resources have been taken away from them, their capital. They don't feel partly engaged with the politics that actually happens in Punjab. And I think there's a lot of disenfranchised people of all communities that live in Punjab that don't feel the government actually listens to them, that doesn't feel that they get their basic rights that they are entitled to get. I think these are really issues that led to 84 being what it was. People standing up for their basic human rights about the things that were really important to them. And, I think it's something that Punjab needs to really be conscious of, about actually how is it that we invest in our young people. We've seen the drug issues in Punjab. It's absolutely, I visit regularly. It's devastating. It's really devastating.
It was a very intrinsic, well, the Punjab politics is a different matter, of course, but what I wanted to understand was your empathy for and where do you stand with vis-a-vis people who constantly ask for Khalistan. So you do empathize with the 1984 and the issues that they might have, but not for us. For a separate country.
I understand any group that seeks for basic human rights. I think that is absolutely right. When I was in India working with street children in 1995, I met the widows' colony. I went to the widows' colony and met those women whose families were massacred in '84 in the Delhi genocide. It touched my heart to have first-account stories of families that were wiped out, and I thought about it. Made me think about how would I feel if this was my family, genuinely, how do we really make sure our humanity connects with other people, so we are not just sitting here and giving the speak, to say, yeah, absolutely, we agree, but actually, what are we going to do about it? And if having a march here in this country stands with solidarity of everybody that died, if it still talks about justice, then those things are absolutely right. I think everybody has the right to,
Yes, of course.
you know.
But what about a march that calls for a separate Punjab?
But like I said, I think it's shifted from there. I think that politics has shifted a very long time ago. I think that's been quite apparent over the years. I think if you look at all of the paperwork, it's talking about the fact that the basic rights were not there. Led people to call for that, rightfully or wrongly, because at the end of the day, this has happened in India or in different states. We've seen unrest. It's not just typical of Punjab, let's be clear. There's been lots of issues, not just Kashmir, but other parts of India as well, yes. So, what I'm saying is that India has got to look at how it treats the people, how it makes sure that their basic commodities are there, so things like water and electricity, the very basics. The fact is, what is it doing about the farmer suicide rate? It is really concerning. It's concerning to the wider Western world, because actually human rights organisations have picked up on this. But actually, what is the Punjab government going to do about this?
Yes,
These
absolutely.
are real issues.
These are issues that we all journalists have grappled with, and I know India is a very huge country and it has a lot to go towards, but where we have come in 70 years is amazing in itself. But coming back to, I know you have to go to the PMQs, walking on those corridors today, how does it feel having charted history, Preet? And what do people tell you? What is the response inside?
Yeah, I mean, this is an incredible building. It's, when you're in there, you definitely feel that sense of privilege and that honour to be here and to be a voice for the constituents that elected you. And, a lot of people have, come up to me and talked to me about, winning the seat, but also about being the first female MP. I think Theresa May mentioned it when we returned back to politics as well, and I think Jeremy's also referred to it around representation, and so has Tom. So yeah, it just feels really, really incredible, and I want to see more women come forward and contact me. I've had lots of young girls contact me saying, actually, we're really interested. Please tell us, how do we get involved? I think that's great. I think that absolutely we need to. Really mobilise our communities into getting involved in politics.
Yes, absolutely. You, though, will be in the histories for years and decades to come. Fantastic. Congratulations, Preet. I'm very, very proud of you. And I'm sure your daughters are very, very proud of you. And I'm very happy to have spoken to someone who has young children and has had the bravery, I have to use that word, to venture into these corridors. All the very best from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. And thank you for premiering yourself on Chai Chat, if I can use that. First time on Indian television. Thank you very, very much. That was absolutely amazing, speaking to Right Honourable Preet Gill, sitting in the Parliament Square next to Gandhi statue with Big Ben and the Parliament behind. Historic moment. Indeed, from Eggbaston, Birmingham, making history, Right Honourable Preet Gill. How did you like this episode? Please Twitter me on my Twitter handle @Loveena Tandon, or write to me on chaichat @ashtak.com. Thank you, take care, and God bless.
Brought to you by Bank of Baroda, India's international bank. Air India, a Star Alliance partner. Himalaya Tentex Royal for men's power and health.